I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now, here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 18507 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. In this episode, I'm going to tell you the story of a most exceptional Vietnam veteran. He is David Hackworth. Most of us have heard of David Hackworth, but many of us, including myself, do not know that much about the man. A story about David Hackworth appeared on the We Are Mighty website. It was first published back in 2016, titled, David Hackworth's Men Wanted to Frag Him Before They Learned to Love Him. That's a sign of a very good commander when that process occurs. Even though this story about David Hackworth was published 4 years ago, really doesn't matter. He passed away back in 2005. He packed his life full of adventure. When you hear his story, it sort of makes you proud to be one of his fellow Vietnam veterans. He did some amazing things over there. I'm going to share this story with you just so you can have a greater appreciation of this great American. The story was submitted by Mr. James Elphick. He did a good job telling about the life of David Hackworth and what he did primarily in Vietnam. He did some very interesting things after he left the Army, including encouraging a Navy admiral to commit suicide by his reporting. David Hackworth was no shrinking violet, I'll guarantee you. Let's take a look at this story, and when we're done, you will agree with that statement. Dateline at We Are the Mighty website. David Hackworth, officially known as Hack, was a one-of-a-kind American soldier and legend among the troops. His military acumen, both on and off the battlefield, are rivaled by few. Continuing. His service spanned nearly 3 decades and began at the age of 14 during World War II when he lied about his age to join the Merchant Marine. At that time, he was living out in Santa Monica, California. And even at that early age, he craved adventure. Continuing. After his time with the Merchant Marine in the Pacific, his lust for adventure and the military life was not satisfied, so he again lied about his age to join the U.S. Army as an infantryman, a job at which he would excel. Hackworth was stationed on occupation duty in Trieste with the 88th Infantry Division before volunteering for a combat unit in Korea. It would be in action in Korea that then Sergeant Hackworth would start to make a name for himself and to start his collection of Silver Stars and Purple Hearts. He served with numerous elite units while in Korea, including the 8th Ranger Company, 25th Recon Company, and the 27th Wolfhound Raiders. He also set a precedent he would follow for the rest of his career in combat. Lead from the front, attack aggressively, ignore overwhelming volumes of fire, and when necessary, shrug off wounds to continue the attack. Because Hackworth reached the rank of sergeant because he lied about his age in 1945, he was still only 19 years old in February of 1951 when he earned his first Silver Star and Purple Heart, leading troops in Korea. His gallantry in action and aggressive leadership style also earned him a battlefield promotion to second lieutenant and an offer from the commander of the 27th Infantry Regiment to create a special unit, the Wolfhound Raiders. After being promoted, Lieutenant Hackworth continued his aggressive leadership, volunteering for dangerous patrols and missions, earning 2 more Silver Stars and 2 more Purple Hearts. At one point, he refused a direct order to evacuate due to his wounds and stayed on the field until all his wounded men had been retrieved. At the age of 20, he was promoted to captain, the youngest in the Army. He also volunteered to stay for another tour in Korea, this time with the 40th Infantry Division. Between the wars, Captain Hackworth completed his bachelor's degree and served in a variety of positions. When the announcement was made that military advisors were being sent to Vietnam, Hackworth immediately volunteered, but was denied on grounds that he had too much combat experience. As Pete Hogwallop said in the movie, "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" That don't make no sense. Isn't it logical that you would want your combat experienced guys in Vietnam? Far be it from me to question the wisdom of the higher-ups in the military. Continuing. He would eventually deploy to Vietnam in 1965 with the 1st Battalion, 327th Infantry, 101st Airborne Division as a major, first as the battalion executive officer, and later the battalion commander. Major Hackworth was once asked to establish an elite unit, the Tiger Force, to out-guerrilla the guerrillas, or out-G'ing the G, as he called it. During this tour, he added a new component to his leadership style, using his command and control helicopter to insert right into the fight where he was needed most, again leading his troops from the front. During Hackworth's first tour in Vietnam, he earned 2 more Silver Stars, as well as the first of 2 Distinguished Service Crosses he would earn there. After Major Hackworth returned to the States, he was stationed at the Pentagon briefly, promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, once again the youngest in the Army, and then sent back to Vietnam with S.L.A. Marshall to conduct research for a book they would co-author called The Vietnam Primer. In the book, Hackworth advocated for the counterinsurgency tactics of out-G'ing the G, but more importantly that the fundamentals of combat never change and that a well-trained grunt is the most lethal weapon an army can employ. He is absolutely right about that. Continuing. In 1969, Lieutenant Colonel Hackworth was given a unique opportunity to take the poorly trained and demoralized 4th Battalion, 39th Infantry Regiment of the 9th Infantry Division and to apply his knowledge and turn it into a formidable fighting force. Training the unit in counterinsurgency tactics, Lieutenant Colonel Hackworth's leadership transformed the unit into the hardcore Recondo Battalion that was soon routing enemy main forces. Though initially there was talk of fragging their new lifer commander, the men soon found their improved tactics and training improved their lives, and many credit Hackworth with saving their lives. I must make a comment here. Seeing a transformation like that happen in a unit is an amazing thing. I was privileged to witness the same occurrence when I was with A Battery, 4th of the 77th Field Artillery with 101st. In 1970, when I was flying Cobra gunships. When I joined the unit, it was slack. Morale was droopy. Nobody seemed to care much about anything. We got a new commander by the name of Major Richard Mills. He was like Hackworth in the fact that he came in and he was tough in the beginning because the unit needed it. A lot of people complained. They didn't like it. They wanted to get rid of him. But before long, his leadership began to take place and that unit straightened up and became a very efficient and disciplined killing machine. That was the reason we were there. It was a wonderful experience to see such a thing happen. I'm sure the vast majority of those guys in the 4th Battalion, 39th Infantry felt the same thing. And once they achieved that level of efficiency that Colonel Hackworth forced on them, I'll guarantee you they were different people for the better. Had to throw that in. That's one of the rewarding experiences a person in the military can have. And I remember it and appreciate it forevermore. Continuing with Colonel Hackworth's story. During his tenure as commanding officer of 4th of the 39th Infantry, Colonel Hackworth was awarded an additional 5 Silver Stars and another Distinguished Service Cross. He consistently braved enemy fire and had his pilot do so as well to reach wounded soldiers, direct operations and fire support, and when need be, to join the fight himself. His soldiers have pushed for the Medal of Honor for an action in which he had his helicopter land virtually on top of an enemy position while he hung from the skids and pulled his pinned-down troops to safety. During his tours in Vietnam, Hackworth was wounded an additional 5 times for a total of 8, count 'em 8, Purple Hearts, tying him for the second most received by a single person. Colonel Hackworth was next assigned as an advisor to the South Vietnamese Army. However, his views on the war had taken a turn for the worse. No kidding. Dissatisfied by his experiences with SLA Marshall and the U.S. military's failure to learn from the lessons in Vietnam, he also came to see the ARVN officers as corrupt and incompetent. In 1971, though, after being promoted to colonel and turning down a second opportunity to attend the Army War College, he gave an interview in which he spoke disparagingly about the war in Vietnam. He criticized U.S. commanders and called for a withdrawal of troops. This, of course, effectively ended Hackworth's career. Once you stray from the party line in the military, it's all over with. He retired after 26 years of service, 7 of which he spent in combat zones, owning an exemplary record for heroism and the love and respect of all those who served under him. That is the story of extraordinary Vietnam veteran David Hackworth. I don't know about you, but I was highly impressed. I hope you enjoyed this description of David Hackworth's service in Vietnam. He passed away in 2005. He led a good life in service to his country. I am hereby issuing you an official Vietnam Veteran News podcast salute for your service to your country. David Hackworth, rest in peace. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 1857 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Thank you so much for coming to listen to these stories. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to listen to more. Coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?